Detective Sarah Chen stood beside him, her expression unreadable, as the medical examiner prepared to pull back the white sheet. Henry's hands trembled, not from fear, but from confusion that bordered on rage. "Mr. Blackwood," Chen said, her voice cutting through the antiseptic silence of the morgue, "I need you to understand something before we proceed. What you're about to see will change everything you thought you knew about your life." Henry had received the call 4 hours ago while installing crown molding in the Victorian mansion on Riverside Drive. 28 years he'd been a master carpenter, building homes for Ashford's wealthiest families, and never once had his phone ringing filled him with such immediate dread. The detective's words still echoed in his skull like a death. "Nell, your daughter is dead. Mr. Blackwood, we need you to identify the body." He'd laughed. Actually laughed into the phone. "Detective, I think you've made a mistake. I have one son, Marcus. He's alive and well, working on his graduate thesis at the State University. No daughter. Never had a daughter." The silence on the other end lasted too long. When Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Henry's stomach drop. "Mr. Blackwood, the deceased had your home address in her wallet. Her identification lists you as her biological father. Her name is Emma Blackwood, age 28, born the same day and hour as your son Marcus. She's his twin sister. And sir, I don't think she died by accident." Those words detonated Henry's reality. Twin sister. 28 years. The same birthday as Marcus. Impossible. His ex-wife Rachel had told him their daughter was stillborn during that horrific delivery. At Mercy General Hospital, he'd held Marcus, his surviving son, while Rachel recovered in the ICU, both of them drowning in grief for the baby girl they'd never gotten to know. 3 months later, Rachel had vanished, leaving nothing but a note saying motherhood was too painful, that she couldn't look at Marcus without seeing the daughter she'd lost. Henry had raised Marcus alone. Every scraped knee, every parent-teacher conference, every birthday, every Christmas, just the two of them against the world. And now this detective was telling him it was all built on a lie so massive it defied comprehension. The medical examiner pulled back the sheet. Henry's knees buckled. Chen caught his arm, steadying him. But nothing could steady the world that had just tilted off its axis. The young woman on the table had Marcus's face. Not similar, not reminiscent. Identical, but feminine. The same sharp jawline Henry saw in the mirror every morning. The same distinctive amber eyes Marcus had inherited. The same small scar pattern on the left eyebrow that Marcus had gotten from a childhood fall. Even in death, the resemblance was so profound, it felt like looking at a parallel universe version of his son. "That's impossible," Henry whispered, but the evidence was literally dead in front of him. "How is this possible?" Chen pulled out her phone, swiping to a document. Emma Blackwood was placed for adoption 3 days after birth, through a private agency called New Horizons Adoptions. The adoptive parents were David and Michelle Torres. They raised her in Nevada. Michelle died in a car accident 6 years ago. David passed from a heart attack 8 months ago. Emma only discovered she was adopted when settling David's estate. She found the original adoption papers hidden in a safety deposit box. Henry couldn't tear his eyes away from Emma's face. His daughter, the child he'd mourned for 28 years, had been alive this entire time, growing up with strangers, never knowing her biological family existed. When did she come to Ashford? 6 weeks ago. We found a journal in her apartment. She'd been tracking down information about her birth parents. She found you and Marcus easily enough through public records, but she was also looking for her birth mother. Chen paused, her dark eyes boring into Henry's. She found Rachel. The name hit Henry like a physical blow. "Rachel's here? In Ashford?" "Not just in Ashford. She's married to a man named Victor Castellanos. Ring any bells?" Henry's blood ran cold. Everyone in Ashford knew Victor Castellanos. Real estate developer, philanthropist, sitting on the boards of half the major charities in the city. His face was on billboards advertising luxury condominiums. He'd donated the new wing to the Children's Hospital. On the surface, Victor was Ashford's most respected citizen. But Henry had heard other stories. Whispered rumors at the hardware store, quiet warnings at the contractor meetings, businesses that opposed Victor's developments mysteriously burning down, competitors who suddenly faced catastrophic financial audits, city council members who voted against his projects finding themselves embroiled in scandals, nothing ever proven. But the pattern was there for anyone Willing to see it, Rachel. Married Victor Castellanos. Henry repeated, the pieces clicking together in his mind with sickening clarity. When? 7 months after she left you. They've been married 27 years. Chen pulled up another photo. But here's where it gets interesting. Emma didn't just find Rachel. She started investigating her. Want to know what she discovered? Henry nodded, unable to speak. Chen swiped through a series of photos taken from Emma's phone. Rachel meeting with elderly men in coffee shops. Her body language intimate and familiar. Rachel touring luxury apartments with different men, always touching their arms, laughing at their jokes. Rachel at expensive restaurants, always with someone new, always playing the same role. Your ex-wife and Victor Castellanos have been running a con for over 2 decades. They target wealthy widowers and elderly men living alone. Rachel befriends them, builds relationships, gains their trust. Then Victor steps in as their financial advisor. Within months, their money disappears into offshore accounts and shell corporations. By the time the victims realize they've been scammed, Rachel's moved on to the next target. And the paper trail is impossible to trace. The morgue felt like it was spinning. Henry gripped the edge of the examination table. How many victims? We've confirmed 19. The real number is probably higher. Some victims died before they could come forward. Others were too embarrassed to admit they'd been conned. The ones who did complain found themselves facing legal problems of their own, courtesy of Victor's connections. Witnesses recanting testimony, evidence disappearing. Complaints buried by officials on Victor's payroll. Chen's expression hardened. They're professionals. Mr. Blackwood, they've refined this operation over decades, and they've gotten away with it because they're smart, careful, and absolutely ruthless. Emma found out about all this? Henry looked at his daughter's still face, seeing courage there, seeing the determination that Marcus had inherited, the stubborn refusal to let injustice stand that Henry recognized from his own reflection. She did more than find out. She documented everything, followed Rachel for weeks, photographed her with different marks, compiled a list of victims. She was planning to go to the police. Chen's voice dropped. But 4 days ago, she made a mistake. She confronted Rachel directly, told her she knew everything about the con operation, that she was going to expose them both. Henry's hands clenched into fists. And they killed her. The preliminary autopsy shows massive internal bleeding from a ruptured spleen. The official story is she fell down the stairs in her apartment building. Witnesses reported hearing a scream and a loud crash. But the forensic evidence tells a different story. The bruising pattern on her torso is consistent with being struck repeatedly by something cylindrical, probably a pipe or baton. The injuries to her skull show she was already unconscious before she went down those stairs. Someone beat your daughter severely, then threw her body down a stairwell to make it look like an accident. The rage that filled Henry then was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. It was cold, focused, absolute. Where's Rachel now? Mr. Blackwood, I know what you're thinking. Don't. If you go after them, you'll end up in a cell or dead. These people have killed before. We're building a case, but we need evidence that will hold up in court. Victor has the best lawyers money can buy, and half the city officials in his pocket. Then what am I supposed to do? Just let my daughter's murderers walk free while you build your case. Henry's voice cracked. I didn't even know she existed until an hour ago. And now she's dead because she tried to do the right thing. You have to let me do my job, Chen interrupted. But I need your help to do it right. Emma was smart. She hid evidence we haven't found yet. Her apartment was cleaned out. Her laptop and phone were taken, but I don't believe they got everything. We need to find what she hid before they do. And we need to do it carefully. Because if Victor suspects we're getting close, he'll disappear. He has resources in a dozen countries. Once he runs, we'll never catch him. Henry forced himself to think past the grief and rage, forced himself to focus on the problem the way he would a complex carpentry project. Break it down, find the weak points, build a solution. What do you know about Emma's movements before she died? Jen pulled out a notepad. She lived in a studio apartment on Maple Street. Low rent, month-to-month lease. She worked as a medical transcriptionist, remote work, flexible hours. Gave her time to investigate Rachel and Victor. Her bank records show regular deposits from legitimate sources, no unusual spending. She kept a low profile, didn't make friends in the building, stayed focused on her mission. Where's the apartment? Still sealed as a crime scene. My team searched it thoroughly. But you don't know what you're looking for, Henry finished. You're looking for evidence of a crime. I'm looking for evidence of my daughter's mind. How she thought? Where she'd hide something important. Chen studied him for a long moment. You're a carpenter. You know buildings, structures, hiding places contractors use. I know where people hide things they don't want found. And I know my daughter inherited more from me than just amber. Eyes. Henry looked at Emma's face one last time, memorizing every detail, burning it into his memory alongside the guilt of never knowing her. Give me access to her apartment. Let me find what she hid. That's illegal. Mr. Blackwood, you called me here to identify my daughter's body. You told me she was murdered by people who've been destroying lives for decades. You told me they're going to get away with it unless we find evidence. Henry met Chen's gaze. So give me the access I need to find that evidence, or I'll break in and find it myself. Your choice, detective. But either way, I'm finding out what Emma discovered, and I'm making sure the people who killed her pay for it. Chen was quiet for several heartbeats. Finally, she pulled out her phone and made a call. Martinez, I need you to meet me at the Maple Street location. Bring the crime scene access. Keys. She hung up and looked at Henry. You have 2 hours before the next shift checks the scene. Anything you find, you photograph and leave in place. You don't take anything. You don't move anything substantial. We do this by the book or the evidence won't hold up in court. Understood? Understood. And Mr. Blackwood, if Victor finds out we're actively investigating Emma's death, he'll know it wasn't ruled an accident. He'll run, and people connected to this case will start dying. So whatever you find, we keep it quiet until we're ready to move. Henry nodded. What about my son? Marcus needs to know about his sister. Not yet. The fewer people who know, the safer everyone is. Victor has eyes and ears everywhere. If word gets out that we're building a murder case, he'll know within hours. The apartment on Maple Street was exactly what Chen had described. Small, sparse, temporary. Emma had lived here like a soldier on a mission, her life stripped down to essentials. Henry stood in the center of the main room, trying to see it through his daughter's eyes. A futon against one wall, a folding table with a laptop charger but no laptop, a small kitchenette with minimal dishes. The walls were bare except for one framed photograph that made Henry's breath catch. It showed Marcus at his college graduation, cap and gown, that familiar lopsided smile. Emma must have gotten it from social media, printed it out, framed it. She'd been watching her twin brother from afar, learning about the life they should have shared. Where would you hide something? Emma? Henry muttered, scanning the room with a carpenter's eye. The police had already checked obvious spots. Under the mattress, inside the toilet tank, behind the heating vents. Chen's team was thorough. But Emma wasn't hiding something from casual searchers. She was hiding it from professionals, from people who'd kill to keep their secrets buried. Henry started with the structure itself. He ran his hands along the baseboards, feeling for inconsistencies, checked the window frames for loose sections, examined the ceiling tiles, for any that sat differently than others. Nothing. The apartment was old, built in the 60s, but it was solid. Then he noticed the closet. Small, shallow, typical of buildings from that era. He opened it, seeing Emma's limited wardrobe hanging neatly. A few pairs of shoes on the floor. Nothing unusual, but the closet felt wrong somehow. Henry stepped inside, measuring the depth with his body. Then he went back into the main room and paced off the distance to the exterior wall. The closet was 2 feet shallower than it should be, heart racing. Henry returned to the closet and examined the back wall more carefully. It looked solid, painted the same beige as the rest of the apartment. But when he knocked on it, the sound was hollow. Not drywall, something thinner. He ran his fingers along the edges, finding a seam hidden beneath layers of paint and caulk, working carefully. Henry used his pocket knife to cut through the caulk. The back wall wasn't actually attached. It was a panel carefully fitted to look permanent. He pulled it away, revealing a hollow space between the closet and the actual exterior wall. Inside was a fireproof document box. Henry pulled it out with shaking hands. The box wasn't locked. Inside, he found a treasure trove of evidence that made his blood run cold. Photographs of Rachel with at least a dozen different elderly men. Detailed notes on each mark, including their names, net worth, vulnerabilities. Bank statements showing accounts in the Cayman Islands with millions of dollars. Legal documents for shell corporations. But most damning of all was a leather journal filled with Emma's handwriting, chronicling months of investigation. Henry flipped to the last entry. Dated 3 days before Emma's death. I made a terrible mistake. I thought if I confronted Mom, if I told her I knew everything, she'd break down and confess. I thought maybe there was some humanity left in her, some maternal instinct that would make her protect me instead of her criminal empire. I was wrong. She listened to everything I had to say, and then she smiled. She actually smiled and said, "You're just like your father. Too honest for your own good. That's why I had to get rid of you both." She admitted she gave me up for adoption because twins were too complicated for her plans with Victor. She needed to be free to disappear and reinvent herself. I was excess baggage. She said if I went to the police, I'd regret it. That Victor has people who make problems disappear. I told her I wasn't afraid of her or Victor. That I'd already made copies of everything I found. That I'd hidden evidence where they'd never find it. I think I made another mistake. I saw it in her eyes. The calculation. She's not going to try to scare me off. She's going to eliminate me. I need to go to the police tomorrow. First thing. I can't wait any longer. If something happens to me, if I don't make it to the police station, I'm leaving this journal and all the evidence where someone will eventually find it. Maybe years from now. Maybe never. But at least there will be a record of what they did. A record that I existed and tried to stop them. Tell my brother Marcus I'm sorry we never got to meet. Tell our father. I wish I'd had the courage to introduce myself before it was too late. Tell them I loved them even though I never knew them. And tell the world what Rachel Blackwood and Victor Castellanos really are. Monsters, Henry. Read the entry 3 times. Tears streaming down his face. His daughter had known she was going to die. She'd walked into the trap anyway, believing in justice, in the system, in the basic goodness that Henry had somehow passed down to her. Despite never being part of her life, he photographed every document, every page of the journal, every piece of evidence. Then he carefully returned everything to the box, placed the box back in its hiding spot, and reinstalled the false wall. Jen had said not to remove anything, to keep everything in place for the official investigation. But Henry made sure he had complete digital copies before he left. Outside the apartment, Jen was waiting in her unmarked car. Henry slid into the passenger seat and handed her his phone. She scrolled through the photographs, her expression darkening with each swipe. "This is enough," she said finally. "This is enough to bring them both down. We have evidence of fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. We can tie them to at least 19 victims, probably more, combined with the forensic evidence from Emma's body." "It's not enough for murder," Henry interrupted. "You said it yourself. Without a witness or direct evidence linking them to Emma's actual death, any decent lawyer will argue reasonable doubt. Rachel and Victor will claim they knew nothing about Emma's investigation. They'll say whoever killed her was acting independently, probably one of their victims seeking revenge. They'll walk on the murder charge." Chen's jaw clenched. "You're right. We can put them away for financial crimes, probably 20 to 30 years. But unless we can prove they ordered Emma's death, then we get them to prove it themselves." Chen's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" Henry had been thinking about this since the moment he'd found Emma's journal. Since he'd read her words about confronting Rachel, about the calculation in his ex-wife's eyes. Rachel was smart, careful, professional, but she was also arrogant. She thought she'd gotten away with it. Thought Emma's evidence had died with her. Emma told Rachel she'd hidden copies of everything, Henry said. Rachel knows that evidence is out there somewhere. She's probably been searching for it, tearing apart Emma's apartment remotely, checking every place Emma might have stashed documents. But she hasn't found it, which means she's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. You want to bait her, Chen realized. Make her think someone found Emma's evidence, not just someone, me, her ex-husband, the father of the daughter she murdered. Henry's voice was ice. Rachel needs to believe I have everything Emma collected. Every photograph, every bank statement, every journal entry. She needs to think I'm about to go public with it, about to destroy everything she and Victor built. She'll try to kill you. I'm counting on it, but this time, you'll be ready. You'll have surveillance, witnesses, evidence. When Rachel or one of Victor's people comes after me, you catch them in the act, and you make them talk. Chen shook her head. It's too dangerous. Victor has professional killers on payroll, the kind of people who don't leave witnesses or evidence. If they come after you, I might not be able to protect you in time. Then teach me how to protect myself. Wear a wire, set up cameras, whatever it takes. But we're doing this, detective, because if we don't, Rachel and Victor will keep destroying lives until they die of old age in their mansion, surrounded by stolen wealth. Emma deserves better than that. Chen stared out the windshield for a long moment. I could lose my badge for this. If something goes wrong, if you get hurt, if I get hurt, it'll be worth it to stop them. My daughter died trying to save people she'd never met. The least I can do is finish what she started. The plan took shape over the next 72 hours. Chen brought in FBI agents she trusted, people outside Victor's sphere of influence. They set up surveillance on Henry's house and workshop, installed hidden cameras throughout his property, gave him a panic button disguised as a car key fob, coached him on how to handle confrontation, how to get Rachel or her proxies to incriminate themselves on tape. And then Henry made the call that would set everything in motion. He dialed Rachel's number, the one Emma had documented in her journal. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. A voice he hadn't heard in 27 years. Hello? Rachel, it's Henry. Silence. Complete stunned silence. Then carefully controlled, Henry? Is this really you? It's me. We need to talk about our daughter Emma. Another pause. Henry could almost hear Rachel's mind racing, calculating, trying to determine how much he knew. I don't know what you're talking about. We only had one child, Marcus. Our daughter was stillborn, remember? Stop lying, Rachel. Emma found you. She knew about Victor, about your operation, about everything you've been doing for the past 27 years. And now Emma's dead. And I have all the evidence she collected before. You had her murdered. That's insane. I don't save it. I have her journal. I have photographs of you with your marks. I have bank statements for your offshore accounts. I have everything, Rachel. And if you don't meet me in person to explain why you gave up our daughter and then killed her when she got too close to your secrets, I'm taking it all to the FBI tomorrow morning. He could hear Rachel breathing, could practically feel her panic through the phone line. Henry, listen to me. Whatever you think you know, Riverside Park, the North Pavilion, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone or I go straight to the federal building. And Rachel, if anything happens to me between now and then, if I so much as get a flat tire, copies of everything Emma found go to every news outlet in the state. Your choice. Talk to me tomorrow, or spend the rest of your life in prison. He hung up before she could respond. Chen, listening through the wire, gave him a tight smile. She'll come. She has to. She needs to know exactly what you have. Needs to assess whether she can neutralize you or negotiate. But she won't come alone, Henry. Victor will have people there, probably armed. Are you absolutely sure about this? Henry thought about Emma's face on that morgue table. Thought about the daughter he'd never gotten to hold, never gotten to watch grow up, never gotten to tell he loved her. Thought about Marcus, who didn't even know he'd had a twin sister, who'd been robbed of a lifetime with his other half, I'm sure, Riverside, Park at 8 p.m. in late. October was cold and dark. The pavilion was lit by a single overhead lamp that created more shadows than illumination. Henry arrived early, wearing the wire Chen had fitted him with, knowing surveillance teams were positioned throughout the park, FBI snipers on nearby rooftops, undercover agents posing as joggers and homeless people. If anything went wrong, they'd move in within seconds. At exactly 8 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Rachel stepped out, and Henry's breath caught despite everything. She'd aged well, her beauty now refined rather than youthful. Expensive clothes, professional styling, the appearance of wealth and success. Behind her, 2 men emerged from the car, large, professional, with the cold eyes of people who'd done violence for money. Rachel approached slowly, her bodyguards flanking her. She stopped 10 feet away, studying Henry with an expression he couldn't read. You look good, Henry. The years have been kind to you. I wish I could say the same, but looking at you makes me sick. Henry's voice was steady, controlled. You gave away our daughter. You lied to me for 27 years. And when Emma found you and threatened your criminal operation, you had her killed. How do you live with yourself? Rachel's carefully composed expression cracked, just slightly. You don't understand. You never understood. I was 19 when I got pregnant, Henry. 19 and terrified. Twins were too much. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't be the mother they needed. So you gave Emma away to strangers and told me she was dead. You made me grieve a child who was alive. It was better that way. Better for her, better for you, better for Marcus. She had a good life with the Torres family. They gave her opportunities I never could have. Until she came looking for answers and you killed her. Henry's rage broke through, his voice echoing across the empty park. She was your daughter, Rachel. Our daughter. And you murdered her to protect your con operation with Victor Castellanos. He didn't kill her, Rachel said. But her eyes betrayed her. I had nothing to do with what happened to Emma. Liar, I read her journal. She wrote about confronting you, about how you threatened her. She documented everything, Rachel. Every victim you and Victor scammed, every shell corporation, every offshore account. She was going to expose you both, so you had her beaten and thrown down a stairwell to make it look like an accident. One of Rachel's bodyguards shifted, his hand moving toward something inside his jacket. Henry's pulse spiked, but he forced himself to stay calm, to keep talking, to get Rachel to admit what she'd done. Where is it? Rachel demanded. Where's Emma's evidence? Safe. Multiple copies, multiple locations. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. Every crime you've committed, every life you've destroyed, you and Victor will spend the rest of your lives in Supermax prisons. Rachel's composure cracked further. What do you want, Henry? Money? I can pay you. Whatever you need. Name your price. I want you to admit what you did. I want you to say it out loud. You killed Emma. You murdered our daughter. I can't say it. Henry stepped forward, and immediately both bodyguards drew weapons. Chen's voice crackled in his hidden earpiece. Hold position. We're moving in. Rachel looked at the guns, then at Henry, and something in her expression changed. The mask fell away completely, revealing the monster beneath. Fine. Yes, I killed her. Victor and I both decided she was too dangerous to let live. She wouldn't listen to reason, wouldn't accept money to keep quiet. She wanted to destroy everything we'd built, so we destroyed her first. Just like we'll destroy you, she nodded to her. Bodyguards, everything happened at once. The bodyguards raised their weapons. Henry hit the ground, reaching for his panic button. FBI agents emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Rachel screamed, running for her car. One bodyguard opened fire, his bullets shattering the pavilion's roof. Return fire dropped him instantly. The second bodyguard grabbed Rachel, using her as a human shield, dragging her backward toward the Mercedes. Henry stayed low, watching the chaos unfold, praying the FBI team was as good as Chen promised. The remaining bodyguard fired twice more, hitting an FBI agent in the shoulder. Then a sniper round took him down, precise and fatal. Rachel collapsed, unharmed but covered in her bodyguard's blood. Screaming incoherently, Chen appeared beside Henry, helping him up. You okay? I'm fine. Did you get it? The confession? Every word. She admitted to Emma's murder on tape, with a dozen federal witnesses. Victor Castellanos is being arrested as we speak, along with 8 associates connected to their operation. It's over, Henry. You got them. Across the park, agents were cuffing Rachel, reading her rights. She was still screaming, but her words were just noise now. The careful facade was gone, leaving only the desperate criminal. She'd always been, Henry. Watched them lead her away, feeling no triumph, only exhausted relief. I need to tell Marcus. He deserves to know about his sister. I'll drive you. Marcus was in his apartment near campus, surrounded by textbooks and research papers, when Henry and Chen arrived. One look at his father's face, and Marcus knew something was catastrophically wrong. Dad? What happened? You look like... Sit down, son. I have something to tell you. And it's going to change everything you thought. You knew about our family, Henry. Told him everything. About Emma, about Rachel's lies, about the murder and the investigation and the confrontation in the park. Marcus listened in stunned silence, his expression cycling through disbelief, grief, rage, and finally settling into a kind of numb acceptance. I had a twin sister, Marcus said finally, his voice hollow. All my life I felt like something was missing, like I was supposed to be part of a pair. I thought I was crazy for feeling that way. You weren't crazy. That connection was real. Emma felt it too. That's part of why she came looking for us. Henry pulled out his phone, showing Marcus the graduation photo Emma had framed in her apartment. She knew about you. She was proud of you. She wanted to meet you. Marcus stared at the photo, tears streaming down his face. And now I'll never get the chance. We'll never get to know each other, never get to make up for lost time. It's not fair, Dad. It's not fucking fair. No, it's not. But we can honor her memory. We can make sure what she died for meant something. The trial was 6 months later. Rachel and Victor faced federal charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, murder for hire, racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering, and 18 counts of elder fraud. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Emma's journal and photographs, Testimonies from 19 victims whose lives had been destroyed. Bank records showing millions in stolen funds. Forensic evidence proving Emma's death was murder, not accident. And the recording of Rachel's confession in Riverside Park. Her own words condemning her absolutely. Victor tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against Rachel in exchange for a reduced sentence. Rachel, in turn, tried to claim Victor had controlled her, that she'd been coerced into criminal activity. The jury believed neither of them. The verdict came back unanimous on all counts. Victor Castellanos was sentenced to life without parole. Rachel received the same. Additional suspects connected to their operation received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. The whole criminal empire collapsed overnight. Its architects finally held accountable. For decades of destruction, Henry attended every day of the trial, Marcus beside him. They listened to victims describe how Rachel and Victor had ruined their lives. They heard forensic experts detail how Emma had died. They watched Rachel and Victor's masks finally, completely slip, revealing the predators they'd always been. On the day of sentencing, the judge allowed victim impact statements. Henry stood at the podium, looking directly at Rachel for the first time since Riverside Park. Emma Torres, born Lucy Blackwood, lived 28 years believing her birth mother was dead. When she learned the truth, she didn't seek revenge. She sought justice. She spent months investigating you and your husband, documenting your crimes, preparing to save the innocent people you were actively destroying. For that courage, for that selflessness, you had her murdered. You took a young woman with her whole life ahead of her and snuffed out her light because she threatened your money and freedom. No sentence can adequately punish what you've done. No prison can contain the evil you represent. But knowing you'll spend the rest of your lives locked away from the world you terrorize brings me some measure of peace. Emma died a hero. You'll die forgotten criminals. I think she got the better deal. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Henry read a prepared statement while Marcus stood beside him, silent and solid. Emma Torres was a nursing student, a daughter, a sister. She died trying to expose criminals who'd hurt countless innocent people. In her honor, Marcus and I are establishing the Emma Torres Foundation, dedicated to supporting victims of financial fraud and providing legal assistance to families seeking justice. Emma's life was stolen, but her legacy will be protecting others from the same fate. Thank you. 18 months after Emma's death, Henry and Marcus stood in Riverside Park at the site where Rachel had confessed. The city had erected a small memorial plaque in Emma's honor, recognizing her courage and sacrifice. Fresh flowers surrounded it, left by victims of Rachel and Victor's schemes, people whose lives Emma had saved by stopping the operation. You know what I think about sometimes? Marcus said quietly. What Emma and I would have talked about if we'd met. What kind of relationship we'd have had. I think about that, too, Henry admitted. Every day. All the moments we missed. All the memories we'll never make. Do you think she knew, before she died, that we cared? That we would have loved her if we'd known she existed? Henry thought about Emma's journal entry, her final words expressing love for the family she'd never met. I think she knew, and I think that's why she fought so hard, not just for justice, but for us, to protect the father and brother she'd never gotten to know. They stood there, until the sun set, honoring the woman who'd connected them even in death, the daughter and sister who'd been stolen and then found and then lost again, but not forgotten, never forgotten. Henry returned to his carpentry, but he worked differently now. Every project was dedicated to Emma's memory, every piece crafted with the same precision and care she'd brought to her. Investigation. Marcus threw himself into his studies, eventually becoming a prosecutor specializing in financial crimes, carrying on Emma's mission to protect the vulnerable from predators. The Emma Torres Foundation grew, helping hundreds of fraud victims recover from financial devastation, providing legal support to families seeking justice. Emma's story became a case study in law schools, a testament to the power of individual courage against institutional corruption. Victor Castellanos died in prison, 3 years into his sentence, killed by an inmate whose family he'd bankrupted. Rachel remained locked away, aging behind bars, her beauty and charm worthless in a cell. The empire they'd built was dismantled completely, their assets seized and distributed to victims, but Emma's real legacy wasn't in the criminals punished or the victims compensated. It was in the lives she'd saved by stopping Rachel and Victor before they could claim more victims. It was in the foundation that bore her name. The prosecutors, inspired by her courage, The families who found justice because she'd been brave enough to fight. 5 years after her death, on what would have been Emma's 33rd birthday, Henry and Marcus visited her grave. The headstone read, "Emma Torres, beloved daughter and sister. Your courage changed the world. I wish you'd had more time," Marcus said softly, placing flowers on the grave. "I wish we'd had the chance to know each other. To be the twins we were supposed to be." Henry knelt, touching the cool marble. "But we know you now, Emma. We know what you stood for, what you sacrificed, what you believed in, and we're making sure your death meant something. We're making sure you're remembered not as a victim, but as a hero." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. Somewhere in the city, the foundation Emma had inspired was helping another victim rebuild their life. Somewhere, a prosecutor was using lessons from Emma's case to bring down another criminal operation. Somewhere, Emma's courage was rippling outward, touching lives she'd never meet, protecting people she'd never know. Henry and Marcus stood together at the grave of the daughter and sister they'd lost, united by the woman who'd connected them, inspired by the hero who'd never gotten to know how much she was loved. They stayed until the stars emerged, keeping vigil over the grave, keeping Emma's memory alive through action and dedication. The lesson wasn't about revenge or justice or even family. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was about the power of one person's courage to change everything, about how truth, even when buried and hidden, eventually finds its way into the light, about how love can exist between people who never meet, bonds that transcend time and death. Emma Torres had lived 28 years believing she was alone. In death, she'd brought together a family that never knew she existed. She'd exposed monsters, saved lives, inspired change. And in doing so, she'd proven that even the most carefully hidden truth eventually demands to be heard. Henry and Marcus would spend the rest of their lives honoring that truth, keeping Emma's light burning in a world that tried to snuff it out. Because that's what family does. Even when they never got the chance to say it, even when they only learned they were family after it was too late. Emma Torres died alone, but she would be remembered forever, loved by the father and brother who never stopped looking for the sister they didn't know existed, who never stopped fighting for the justice she deserved, who never stopped telling the world about the hero named Emma who changed everything.